Hi, this is Tony Sagami, and I want to talk to you this week about Crouching Tiger, Hidden Profits. I'm not trying to be silly. What I'm talking about is the Chinese movie industry and the mountain of money that's being made over there. Last week, two movie giants, one American and one Chinese, joined forces with the goal of making a fortune in China. I'm talking about Legendary Entertainment, the American company, and Huahe Brothers Media Corp. That's a Chinese movie studio. They together raised $220 million in private funds and plan to go public on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange sometime in 2012. So it's a little early to invest in that new stock, but it's certainly not the only way to profit from that booming industry. Now, this joint venture is aimed at China's lucrative and growing film market. Now, Legendary Entertainment's already a pretty big name in Hollywood. You may not know that name, but you know some of their movies. They produced the last Batman movie, The Dark Knight. And they also produced the Leonardo DiCaprio thriller called Inception and the last two Hangover movies. Now, Huahe Brothers releases are ones that none of us have probably heard of unless you go in the habit of watching Chinese movies. But they did have a disaster epic called Aftershock, and a kung fu drama called Shaolin. And they also had a very popular series called Detective D and the Mystery of the Phantom Flame. Now, to give you an idea of how big this studio is, their films accounted for 17% of China's total movie box office receipts in 2010. So that gives you an idea how big of a company they are. Now, this new company, which is going to be called Legendary East, plans on making one or two event-style films a year that focus on Chinese history and culture. Now, these films will be distributed globally for worldwide audiences starting in 2013. So it's going to be a very big business. Now, this partnership allows Legendary Entertainment to bypass some very stringent Chinese import restrictions that effectively limit the country to about 20 foreign films a year. Now, Huahe Brothers is going to distribute those films inside China, and Warner Brothers is expected to distribute them outside of China. Now, over the last 4 years, the number of movie screens in China has doubled to 6,200, and that figure is expected to double again by 2015, according to China's State Administration of Radio, Film, and Television. Now, Chinese box office total sales jumped by 64% in last year to 1.5 billion in 2010. Now, to put that in perspective, that's still well behind North America, where we have more than 40,000 movie screens, and that's up from 36,000 in 2004, by the way. And our box office revenues in North America was 10.6 billion in 2010. And those numbers are according to the National Association of Theater Owners. Now, still, China is considered the fourth largest movie market in the world behind North America, the European Union, and Japan. But they only have one screen for every 220,000 Chinese citizens. So there's plenty of room for movie screen growth there. By the way, China is going to help this culture, movie cinema culture, but because they limit the foreign movies coming in. And they encourage China-based productions. But they also want to change that, and they're even offering government tax breaks to build more movie theaters. Now, in China, all the scripts must be approved by the state censors before shooting can begin. They edit out things like sex, excessive violence, and themes that cast the Communist Party or the government in a negative light. All these are banned, and that's why you have such an abundance of films that are emphasizing historic events and also martial arts. Now, how can you invest in this Chinese film industry? Well, Legendary Entertainment is a private company, but Huahe Brothers is a publicly traded stock. It recently reported its results for the first 6 months of the year, and they were spectacular. Their revenues grew to $51.7 million, 63% year-over-year growth, and their profits increased by 125% to $9.9 million US dollars. However, U.S. investors can't buy stock in Huahe Brothers because it's listed on the Shenzhen Stock Exchange, which is closed to non-Chinese investors. But one company you could take a look at is IMAX. IMAX is that Canadian company that trades on the NASDAQ. Its ticker is IMAX. You're probably familiar with those big screen IMAX theaters. Phenomenal graphics and pictures and vivid images. It's a fantastic exposure. The reason that IMAX will give you exposure to the Chinese film market is that the number of IMAX theaters in China is going to rise to 85 this year, up from 40 at the end of 2010. And it's now IMAX's second largest market. Now that IMAX footprint is going to get even bigger in China because it has current contracts to build 177 more by 2013. So on IMAX, no wonder they expect their revenues to come from China, which are currently about 10%, to hit 25% within the next 5 years. Here's a quote from the IMAX CEO. More than half our revenues come from the U.S., but we think it's likely that China will overtake the U.S. as the biggest market at some point in the future. Now that's saying something. Now, I'm not suggesting you rush out and buy IMAX stock today. As always, timing is everything, so make sure you're doing your own homework or wait for my buy signal on Asia Stock Alert. But it's certainly something that is worth your attention. Until next week, this is Tony Sagami signing off.